live and running. Kristina, it's good to see you. And from which city are you calling?
I'm calling from a little village outside of Gothenburg in Sweden, on the west coast of Sweden.
Oh, a little village. What's the name of the village?
It's called Bollebygd.
Well, I can't. I have
No,
zero.
it's
It's
quite complicated, but it's quite close to the airport, to the
Yeah,
Gothenburg airport, Landvetter.
yeah. That's very comfortable. I always thought Swedish is close to German, to our language. Is this?
Yeah, I think it is. For us, we see a lot of similar words, but I think the grammar isn't the same, I think. So, but it's
Do
also difficult to understand German for us.
do you understand German when you hear it at BIOS, for example?
No, no, not really. No, maybe some words, but uh, not the full sort of sentences. No.
Yes, learning Swedish is on my list, so maybe next year.
Ah,
Maybe next
really?
year. I think it's interesting. I mean, it's the land of the Vikings,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and
Mm.
since I saw the series, I think it started in 2014 and stopped on Netflix 2 years ago or something. And Vikings are quite impressive.
I haven't seen that show actually, so maybe I should. Have you been to Sweden before?
Um, at Bio, the last time was in
Yeah, yeah, in
Stockholm
Bio Europe, of course. Yeah.
at
Mm.
Bio Europe, where I was impressed by the dimension. So it was a really long drive from the airport to the city.
Yeah. Did you rent a car or did you go by train?
Cab,
Yeah.
taxi,
Okay. Yeah, because I
taxi.
think I think the easiest way is by train.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just hopped on a taxi and it was 80 kilometers, if I remember it right. And it was really beautiful. It reminded me of Canada.
Yes, yes, I think there are many similarities uh, from
This
Sweden to Canada. Yeah.
Bio Europe is a great starting point for our conversation. It's where we met. You had a speech about ATMP.
Yeah.
And sorry to say so, but I always think about tennis when I hear AT and P. So I think this was the tennis league back then,
Ah,
30
yes.
years ago.
Mm.
And I'm really happy that we can have this conversation today. Let's start the conversation with the three core messages that you want the listeners to take away from today's conversation.
Yeah. So, what I would like the listeners to take with them, is to have a little bit more awareness, of course, about ATMP and what they are and what they can do, and also I would like to also bring some focus to the role of the hospitals when it comes to the innovation process. I hope we can talk a little bit about that. And I think also one message that I think is important is the need of collaboration, both over different professions, but also different stakeholders to make success.
Super great. I have taken some notes to focus my questions on these three parts also. Maybe we can start for business people like me who have zero understanding of life science and research. Maybe we can start with the basics and define what ATMP is. It's not a tennis league, so
No, it's not a tennis league. No, it's a medicinal product. So ATMP stands for Advanced Therapy Medicinal Products, and it's a new category of innovative medical treatments that are based on cells and genes and tissues. Or tissues, you might say. So they are designed to treat or prevent diseases. So they can offer more like a new options for conditions that didn't have any treatments available before. There are different types. So you have the gene therapy that uses the genetic material, and they will modify or replace faulty genes as genes that does not function. Then we have the somatic cell therapy, which uses the cells, and they can manipulate cells that are then used to repair or replace or regenerate diseased tissues or cells in the body. And then the maybe more complex, I'm not sure if it's more complex, but it's tissue engineered products.
Mhm.
So you can replace you can use cells or tissues that are modified to replace or repair damaged tissue or structures in the body. And these therapies are very highly regulated, and they are very complex, and there are some potential risks and ethical considerations, but they have also a great promise of success when it comes to efficient treatments.
That's good. I see that you also invited a guest to join our show. It's in the background, I think. Am I right? Do you have a cat?
It's Siggy.
Siggy.
Yes,
It's a he. Or is it a
it's a
she?
he. Yeah. So you can see him.
Yeah. Black cat. I mean, I have two cats myself, so I'm
You do?
I'm programmed to see cats. So it was just I think I'm not sure if he was lying there or just walked in, but while you were speaking,
He
and
was
he was looking
maybe
around.
moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a Siberian cat.
Oh, really?
Mm.
Really? Yeah. It's
Very, very
is he
friendly
allowed
and
is he allowed
social.
to go outdoors?
No, actually not. But I think that's maybe the more normal thing, because we are also living in the countryside. So
Yeah, yeah.
we're just scared that he will be hit by the train or the cars running by. So
And it must be pretty cold in Sweden in winter, I guess.
yeah, sometimes it's very cold, but at the moment I think we have 4 or 5 degrees. So
Same weather like in Vienna, like we have
yeah.
here. Let's go back to ATMP. How has the landscape in Sweden evolved in the last decade in this area?
So I think in Sweden we have had quite a dramatic development in a positive way. We have had a lot of focus on trying to build an ecosystem and innovation system in Sweden that could support the development of ATMP. So what we have seen lately is that before they were just, the small community working with ATMPs that were aware of what it actually is and what it could be, what could be the use for the society. But now we see that we have a lot of decision makers that are aware of ATMP, and we can see that the government also included it in the new national life science strategy, or the updated one that they presented in November last year. So this is of course very important, because in order to make the changes that we think are needed in policies and the introduction and how to handle the products when they're actually approved, but also supporting the innovations and the transition from the preclinic to a commercialized product. It's very important with the funding from the government as well. So we see that we have a growing community and a growing awareness in Sweden the last couple of years. A big change.
It's good to hear that the government is supporting the development and is putting also some money on the table, which is usually
Yeah,
development very important to
it's
get some
needed.
funds.
Mm.
When we go back to ATMP and cover then the policy side and policymaker side a little bit later in the conversation, why are they so revolutionary in healthcare?
So one of the things with ATMP is that they don't only treat the symptoms, but they can actually cure patients. And we see that they have the potential of treating different indications and conditions that has not been able to or did not have any available treatment before. So this is of course a game changer, that you can see that we now have products that can do so different things that we were able to do before. And what we see is that they are also asking a lot from the healthcare. So they are very complex, and they need to be handled sometimes in a very specific and complex way. And the administration and the side effects can also sometimes be something that you need to be prepared for, and you have to have a readiness level within the hospitals to be able to handle that. So what we think in Sweden is that and I think in general people working in the healthcare, is that we need to do different activities and start working with the questions that will be that we will have to handle in a few years. So what we do in Sweden is a lot of preparation and increasing the readiness level within the healthcare with personnel training, and we need to build specific infrastructures that we might already have, but we need to have larger or more resources.
It's great. I think ATMP for me, it's an abstract term, and when we talk about the science behind it, it's usually for me not so much tangible. Do you have a real life example or something that is in development, a case study that we can walk through to help the listener to understand what ATMP treatments are currently available on the market and how they work and what benefits they create for patients?
So there is, so we have different examples, but one example that we can maybe talk a little bit about is the CAR T cell therapy. People might have heard about that. And this is a groundbreaking gene therapy, and so now you use them to treat different types of blood cancers, such as acute lymphoblastic leukemia, for example. And these right now the products are used only for the patients that do not sort of respond to any other treatment. But we hope that this treatment can be moved a little bit earlier on in the treatment to get even better effects. But it works as you have to take the T cells from the blood from the patient. So this is the starting point. So you take the T cells or the blood from the patient and collect the T cells. And this is actually the starting material for the product. And this needs to be handled in a very specific way, and you need to have specific licensing and also training from the company, and follow the routines that they are that follows the product, so to say. So the product is or the blood is collected, and the T cells are then sent to the company that will take care of the genetic changes in the cells. And what they do is that they introduce a gene so that the cells can express a specific type of receptor that will then be used to connect to the cancer cells and destroy them when the product is then administered to the patient. And you see really good effects from this.
Can we summarize it that it's basically training the own immune system of the patient to attack the cancer cells? So it's basically
exactly. Yeah, so they will identify the cancer cells and be more specific when they do their work, so to say. Yeah.
Is this something in development, or is there already a therapy approved by the FDA or the EMA?
Yeah, so this we have, I think, I'm not in Sweden, we use 4 CAR T products that are approved by the EMA, but also by the Swedish authorities to be introduced within the Swedish healthcare with the HTA analysis and reimbursement and everything.
I'm always curious how to implement that in the healthcare system, because I mean, it's a two-way system, and everything else in the pharma industry I always perceived as a one-way system. You ship something to a hospital, and then they administer it to the patient. You store it, and then you give it to the patient. But this CAR T cell is a two-way process, so they need to extract at the hospital, need probably special equipment for that, then ship it in time and very fast to an external facility, a manufacturer, and they then ship the T cells back. Is this complicated to implement in European healthcare systems?
Yeah, it is complicated. I wasn't around when the first one was introduced. I just started working with ATMP just after, but what we can see is that we are now more prepared than we were to begin with. But there are a lot of things that we need to have. We need to have specific accreditations in the hospital, and we also need to have the specific training from the companies for their specific product. And we also need to, if there are more patients that will be treated, we also need to have more resources in the hospitals. And we see that it's also more complex when we have more products, because every product, more or less, have its own way of handling. Which makes it very complex for the hospitals, because you want to be able to give the patients sort of all these kinds of different CAR-T products, but still it will be very complicated for the hospital staff to be aware of exactly where the differences in the handling are, and so forth. So I think what we are also asking for from the hospital perspective is to be more standardized handling of the products. And there are also very many different types of documentation that follows the product. So you need to be traceable, since it's very, very sort of important that the right product comes back to the right patient. And this also complicates it a little bit for the hospitals. But we see that we have a really good contact with the companies, but they are global. So we have to have, they have already maybe introduced their products elsewhere, and they did the clinical trials in this specific process. So we have to be connected already early on with the clinical trials, and in the connection when they are developing their products and doing all the research, so that we can try to get more standardized and harmonized protocols for the products.
This must be a lot of training for the hospital staff, additional training for each product.
It's a lot of training and qualifications for the hospitals, so it takes a lot of time. Now we see that we have a second product coming from the same company that is introduced, and we can see that has been easier than a new product from a different company, because they have already qualified the hospital different parts. Yeah.
What about the equipment in the hospital? I mean, is it standard? Can this be done with standard equipment, or is it also something they need to invest in?
So no, I think that we do most of the things, but maybe not connected to each other. So this is also something that we see in Sweden. We have introduced or established something that we call ATMP centers, where we can try to support the different functions in the hospital to be connected and to work together. So, and also to have the contact, a lot of the contact with the companies to start before they need to have a contact with the lab and the clinicians. They can talk to us, and we can try to facilitate and organize, so it will be maybe more efficient, and maybe not as much as time consuming for the doctors and for the lab personnel. But yeah, I think it's we are still training, and we also have good contact, I think, with the companies and the organizations for the pharma, so that we can raise the questions and discuss what the companies think is complicated in contact with the hospitals, and the other way as well.
Now, it's amazing how oncology and also the hospitals evolved in the last 5 to 10 years, especially in oncology.
It's impressive. Yeah, I agree.
When we look at the developments in ATMP, is there any recent development or breakthrough that excites you in this area?
I think there are so many things happening in ATMPs. I think that's quite a difficult questions to answer, because I think it's so exciting, all of it. There are so many new things coming, but we see some really impressive new therapies that are treating conditions, monogenetic conditions for children, which of course is very it's wonderful to see that you can treat these kids already early on, and that they can have uh, totally different sort of development because of the gene therapy. And we also have this really um, um, interesting example of Luxturna, which is a therapy for inherited blindness,
Mhm.
which has also been, I listened to patients describe what they are, their experience when they are now seeing light in a totally different way than they did before. So they can move around and see things that they haven't seen in years. And this is also something that is progressing when you get older. So if we can treat the kids, they can keep their sight and they can keep their sensibility to light. So they say that they can. It's like a change from night to day, because that they have sort of they can see the light again instead of just darkness. So
That's
that's
great.
uh,
That's great. I mean, this is a lifetime. Give a kid back a full lifetime of quality, a high quality lifetime.
yeah, yeah.
This is amazing to hear. One question that I need to ask, I mean, when I open social media these days, I think everybody's excited about artificial intelligence. This week, China put a new model on the
Yes.
market
Mm.
and the Nasdaq plummeted, and immediately people screamed, "It's over! It's over! Now China is coming and the US is done." It's a lot of emotion on social media.
Have you
But
tried it, the Chinese? Uh,
no, no, no. I'm pretty happy with ChatGPT. I've spent 2 years with that model, and they have made a lot of development, which I can use for my work to improve
yeah,
communication, to improve emails, to make the process around the podcast much easier. It works well. I'm happy with it. So
yeah. I'm also using ChatGPT, so I think yeah, I agree with you. I haven't tried the other one, but
I
the
don't
time
I,
for everything.
I don't see. I mean, what I'm waiting for are agents, basically, that can take over some tasks. ChatGPT is going in that direction, but it's not fully there yet, in my opinion. But just to have a new LLM, a new model for the sake of having the model, I mean, I have Grok. I tried Grok from X.com.
I don't know about that.
It's a former Twitter. If you just get a Twitter subscription, you get automatically their model. Then I tried Gemini from Alphabet.
Mm.
Um, the model that works well for me is ChatGPT currently for my tasks. And the new Chinese model, it's the fourth model. Then I say, well, why should I try a fourth model on top of the three that I already
Yeah,
have?
I already picked your one that you like working with. But isn't it also that if you have used it before, right? So it gets trained on what you need. So then you have to sort of start from the beginning again, right?
I, I think so. I mean, the problem that I had at the beginning when I think about ChatGPT is I use it mostly for writing to enhance my writing. So when I have an idea, I make a draft, and then I want to know how would, for example, Hemingway say that, or what another person, or what is a rude way to express that, or what is a very kind way to express that, to just understand the
Ah,
nuances between rudeness and kindness, and how you can be more polite, less polite,
oh,
and
that's perfect because in Sweden, when we communicate with the UK, for example, we really need to be a little bit more polite than we used to. So I think that's a really good tip. I think I will use that. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. I grew up in the Austrian mountains, and it's just direct. You say what you have to
It's the
say,
same, I think, in Sweden. Yeah. Mm.
and
More or
you
less. Mm.
And with ChatGPT, I don't understand why people said, Christian, you are rude. And say, well, it's the way I learned it. Well, how should I express it differently? They said, I
Yeah.
don't know, but
But it's still a little bit rude. Yeah. No, but I think also the Englishmen, they it's also their language. So I think it's also easier to be maybe more polite. But I think they are more polite than the Swedes.
and
Mm.
ChatGPT helps me understand these nuances. The problem that I had in the beginning was the answer sounded a little bit artificial. It didn't sound really human.
Mm, mm.
And now the models have just, in my opinion, become better, and it really sounds like human language. It's sentences you can directly use in an email and plug it in. It was not there 2 years ago.
So it sounds great. I will use it more.
So my question now from writing to ATMP and the
Yes.
hospital setting. Um, how do you see artificial intelligence in your setting? How can you use this, let's say, the Chinese model?
So uh, I think you can use it will probably be very important, I think, for the development of ATMPs. So I think we can use it in many different ways. I think for the discovery and the development, the machine learning models, to be able to analyze a lot of data, both genomic and proteomic data, will be very important to identify the targets that can be used for the ATMPs in different conditions. So that will probably be very useful, I think, and I think it's already used. So I think it will just improve through the years. And I think also we see that there can, for the drug discovery, so we can also use AI to better understand how you can simulate how the product will interfere or how it will act when it's in the human body. So you can maybe avoid some of the experiments that you would have to do otherwise. And that would be also, I think, very efficient way of using AI. And maybe we can also help to identify more specific patient subgroups to be enrolled into clinical trials, but also so you get sort of a better tailored patient into the specific trial, and then you will see maybe even better results if you are able to pick the right patients for the right treatment. And this is not only for ATMP. I think it's more of a general improvement, I think. And if we have also the possibility to use AI for the and optimization for the manufacturing and the bioprocessing, that would also be improving and sort of the process of development and manufacturing, I think.
How can AI help in manufacturing?
Sorry?
How can artificial intelligence help in manufacturing?
No, but I think if we have processes that are more automated and you can use AI to understand how to do that, that would be great. But also if you can have quality controls, you can pick the right ones and you can secure the sort of the quality of the product by using the right ones that can be identified maybe by artificial intelligence and understanding how to take the experience that you have and put onto a new product. That could also be very useful, I think.
Yeah, it's the time of the robots. I think it was Alex Savoronko from In Silico Medicine who posted a picture with one of I think it was a Tesla model, Tesla robot, I forgot the name. And he said he has a lab in China, and he said he will buy some robots for his lab and fully automate the process.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah.
This in combination, robotics in combination with artificial intelligence, I think is especially in the manufacturing, there must be a lot of potential.
Yeah, I assume this isn't my sort of specific expertise area, but I think I can only imagine. I think people who work within this field will probably have more to add, but just in general, I think it could, of course, be very, very useful.
My neither. I just always when I see these pictures of these Tesla robots and then the ideas of researchers like Alex, it always reminds me of Terminator 1984 movie where this was just science fiction, and it was unbelievable that a robot might walk and look like a human. And now it's 40 years later. I think I was 10 years old in 1984, Terminator. So my parents were not really happy when I wanted to see the movie. It was Arnold Schwarzenegger. It's an Austrian.
Yeah, I remember it, but I didn't watch it because I was the same age. I was born 74 as well, but I thought it was yeah, a bit scary. Was it
Yeah,
1984, right?
I think it was 1984. I remember
Yeah.
it with 1984. It was also Steve Jobs had this famous speech where he painted IBM as the villain with this dystopian utopia, Orwellian dystopia, and Apple the good guys who fight for freedom and privacy and the rights of people. And then there was Terminator in 1984.
Ah, okay. Ah, that's amazing. Yeah.
It was a fun year, and we were 10 years old. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't remember these parts. I have other memories from that year, I think.
yeah, it was. I got interested in computers, and Apple was always a little bit too expensive. But I had this Commodore computer, and as a man, as a boy, I think it was natural to start to get interested in that new technology.
Yeah, yeah, I remember my father had also an Apple computer. Maybe it was a little bit later, but it was quite early. And I remember it was the Apple with the colors back then.
Yeah, Apple was really innovative, but
Mm.
too expensive for private use. Commodore was the alternative for boys. It was more affordable.
Yeah, yeah.
When we go back to ATMPs, what is a common misconception on the market that you frequently encounter that people have and we could clear up in this podcast?
So I misconception. I don't hear much about that actually, but I know that before early on, maybe 10, 15 years ago, there was a lot of discussions about gene therapies, and there had been a few not as successful therapies back then. But I think sometimes people think that if you are treated or with a gene therapy, this will sort of be something that is permanent for your kid, and your kids will also have this modification and things like that um, if you are treated with this at an early age. But there are no gene therapies available or approved that are focusing on the germ lines of the sperms and the eggs. So we don't treat those. So what we treat are the other cells within the body, which are
Mhm.
not uh, reproducible. So they are just so the modification just stays within the person, and sometimes and it might be um, um, the effect might be life uh, long, and we hope that many of the treatments are lifelong, but they are not transferred to your kids, which is could be the one that you hear about. And I think sometimes also people just think it's not safe enough, and this also puts. I think you need to have the awareness of what type of conditions that this might be useful for. So if there are conditions that are life threatening, for example, this might be a good a choice. And but I think we need to be aware of this, that we still do not have life long follow-up, because these products are new products and we have not seen that yet. But we are adding years, of course, to the follow-up every year. So I think we will know more and more, but of course we should be aware of the risks. And I think that our authorities are watching this very closely as well.
I think we as Europeans are naturally good in observing and finding risks
Yeah, yeah.
and avoiding them with regulations.
Mm, yeah.
Um, when was the first product commercially available in this field?
Oh, um,
Just out of curiosity, if
yeah, yeah. And I'm a bit. I should, of course, be very aware, but I think maybe in 2012 or something. It wasn't that long time. It could be a little bit earlier than that. But
that's
we just saw a few products, and now we see that the number of products are increasing that are approved are increasing every year. And we see a lot of products in clinical trials, but I think around that. But many or a few of the products that were approved early on is no longer on the market for different reasons. Maybe they have a new product for the same type of treatment, so they are now have the approval for the second product. But also some products have been difficult to be sort of, it has not been able to commercialize in a way that you were hoping, because if we have some products that have been very expensive, and the countries and the healthcare systems have not really seen that this type of condition, we cannot put that much money into treatment of this type of condition, for example, and then they have the company has choose not to renew their approval in Europe. So we see this, but there are actually no products that has been approved that have been were removed for safety reasons or anything, but it has been other reasons. Maybe there are some products that they have in the US, for example, that we do not have here in Sweden, here in Europe, and that could be that they didn't see Europe as a market that they would get into in a good way, or get the money that they wanted for the product for different reasons.
But the patient can easily fly to the United States as well to get some treatment. I guess this is with the mobility solutions that we have today, it's pretty.
Yeah, I think it's different depending on what country you come from. But of course, you can pay for it yourself. But yeah.
What got you interested in oncology? You have a PhD in oncology focused on biomarkers, if I remember it right from the preparation.
Yeah, that's correct. So I did my PhD on endometrial cancer, biomarkers for better diagnostics and better understand the prognosis for the patient. And I think from that to the ATMP, or did you just mean about why I picked the oncology? No.
Why oncology? Why biotech in the first place?
So I was interested in biology, but I think I have a lot of different interests. So I think it was just sort of,
But a PhD is a commitment. So a PhD is
a huge commitment, and it was fun. And I think it was also interesting to understand how research is done. I come from a family with researchers. My father was a professor in genetics, and so was his father, my grandfather. So I think it was just sort of a natural way of continuing your studies, I think. So for me, it wasn't like a really big step. It was quite easy, and it seemed like a good way to start and to better understand research and how and to understand things, So research is fun because you get to test and try things, and that's a lot of fun. And also, of course, as you say, it's a commitment, and that's also, I think, it's great to be able to focus on one specific question or area that you can sort of dive into and understand more about. So yeah.
Yeah, PhD is nothing that you do in an afternoon. So
No, it took a few years.
Yeah, I believe that.
Yeah.
So basically, you continued the family legacy. So
Yeah, more or less, I think so. Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, I mean, I have a cancer case in the family right now, and out of curiosity, why is it so difficult to diagnose cancer still in 2024?
So I think it depends on what type of cancer you have. So if you have one of the more researched ones, you will probably have, and that could be very specific ones, or ones that are for children. Cancer, for example, is an area that have been a lot of research within, I think, and of course breast cancer and a few others. You will probably get a lot of information from your from your doctor for what type of, and then they can put you on a specific treatment. But if you have a more rare one, I think we need more research, and we also probably need to understand how to use the information that we have from different types of cancer onto this new type of tumor, or this more rare type of tumor, because that would probably also be very useful and could probably increase the speed of understanding how to better treat. And I know that we have more and more clinical studies, clinical trials that are ongoing, where you look more on the biology of the tumor than on where it's actually the primary tumor is from, to better understand if you can use the genetic markers to treat independent on where the primary tumor is located. And that, I think, is very interesting. I know I thought about that a lot when I was working with these tumors and the biomarkers, that the similarities between different tumors with different origin might be sometimes more, they might be more connected if they have a similar biology than actually another tumor from the same site. So this we can see now is that we understand a little bit more about that.
Yeah, this is what I also learned in the last 2 years, that there are some types of cancer that still need some more research, and it's not easy to spot them and diagnose them early on. Even with proper, with regular visits at the doctor and proper testing, there are some types that still slip through. And
yes, absolutely. We have the ovarian cancer, for example. We don't have a screening for that, for example. They are looking at
why not? I mean, it must be pretty common, I think.
Yeah, it's quite common, but I think it's also a little bit difficult to find a way of identifying the tumor. So you need to, it could be benign cysts, and it could be, so I think they are always, it's a balance between the benefits and so the costs, I would guess. Yeah.
I mean,
But I would expect this kind of screening to be more that you can in the future screen for more things than you can today, of course.
What's the problem that we need to solve? I mean, the idea was, I mean, Theranos is an infamous example, but it would be basically the idea you take a blood drop and can diagnose everything. What problems do we need to solve to achieve? Is it really possible to achieve such a state that you can diagnose every potential disease very early with a little bit of blood? What do we need to solve?
I don't know. It would be great if we could do that, and I would think that it could also be a little bit too much information for us to handle, maybe. But of course, if it's treatable, it's of course very good to identify it early on, if that sort of is a better prognosis, which is often so with the cancers, of course. But I think it's also the costs, to get all these biomarkers very sort of, they need to be very both sensitive but also specific. And this isn't very easy, I think. But sometimes you can use a combination, of course, and that's also what is done often. You have a combination of different markers that can give you sort of an idea of what we are sort of what we are working on, or what questions to be asked, and so forth. But I think it's not easy. We see also that there are some attempts of identifying, what health, what type of food you should eat, and what type of training would be useful for your sort of genetics. I haven't seen much data. I haven't looked for it either, so maybe there is, but on how that is actually working. Are you into that? Have you heard anything about that?
Are you talking about longevity research, I guess?
I'm talking about that you can go and get these genetic tests and see what type of profile you have, and then you get suggestions on what type of food you should choose, and what type of exercise you should pick for your genetic profile. But I haven't really heard anything about the data, if it's actually giving you any more benefits. I haven't heard about that. Health benefits.
I would now need ChatGPT. How should I phrase it very politely? Um, I have heard about it. I got some offers. I have not tried it for the simple fact I'm not a huge believer in that. So it's more
Well,
a thing of belief. And what I've read on the internet didn't convince me enough to invest time and money to look in that direction, which probably is not so much the issue of the companies. They are probably doing all a great job and it's good science. But when I see myself struggling with the basics, I know sugar is bad.
yeah,
It's pretty
yeah,
much. But when I go to the grocery store around the corner, I really cut back on sugar, but sometimes there is a craving, and then I find myself at home with an empty
with
with an empty
candy.
with candy, and it's empty. And I said,
Uh,
okay, I seem to be addicted to sugar. As long as I struggle with the basics, why should I go into the Champions League and say? So I have so much groundwork to do. Also with industrial food, I mean, it's a no-brainer to just avoid some types of food with a lot of chemistry in it and be more on the
mm.
fruit side. But it's the same problem. I mean, some products simply taste good and they are really well done,
Yeah,
even though they are unhealthy. And so I see myself struggling with the basics.
yeah. I think
And
that's probably how many people are handling or are doing it. I think it's not that easy. So I think, but let's be positive, and maybe we can see those kinds of blood samples that can tell us more about uh, potential risks, and also give us the opportunity to get treatment already early on if needed. Yeah.
I try to blame the governments for that and say, please provide a system for me that forces me into keeping these habits, and then we can go into the Champions League. But this is just
So maybe you should have specific stores for people like you and I who cannot avoid sugar. So you just have stores without the sugar.
I completely agree. I want a tax on sugar. I want no sugary products available, and they should be restricted to certain drugstores where
Yeah.
you're allowed, where you just can walk by and not walk in.
So we have that with wine and alcohol in Sweden. We have the specific stores. So you cannot. So if you go into a regular grocery store, we don't have the wine and the beer. Yeah. So forth.
Yeah, I have not so much problems with or without alcohol. It's always I don't drink alcohol, and it's always surprising when I'm at an event and don't drink anything that people
Ah, yeah, yeah.
are
No, but
just
I think it's still, if you have, then you can have the sort of the alcohol store, and then you can
the
have
sugar
the
store.
sugar
Yeah, yeah,
store,
the
and then
candy
you can
store.
have more like
This is the street for the addicted, and
that.
just stay out of the street. I completely agree to that. Uh, uh, I always wondered when we talk about biomarkers and diagnostics. I mean, you need blood to diagnose cancer, and I love running, for example. And when I think back 10, 15 years ago, when I wanted to record my runs, there was no app, were no appliances that I could use. Now I have my Apple Watch. I only need the Apple Watch to record a run. I have Strava app, and it records every meter, heart frequency, heart rate. I have the iPhone. It records where I walk around. It's even so sensitive that it recognizes differences in my walking patterns and reminds me
Let's
of that.
ask you about something. So they can say,
Yeah,
now you're walking slower than you did last week or
yeah,
something. Huh?
yeah. And then also I use ChatGPT and feed a lot of language patterns into the systems. Can you imagine a world where from changes in behavior, like people behave, that it's possible to diagnose diseases early on just from observing the patient 24/7 or the person 24/7?
So I would assume some conditions would be possible, but maybe not. But maybe you can, by the change would be probably an indicator, I would expect. But also, I think um, with other types of conditions, it could maybe, if you have some issues with the knee or something, that would probably be easy. Or if you're behaving like you are very tired, or I don't know. Yeah, probably, but maybe not everything. But maybe more than, but also, the healthcare would explode if if everyone sort of gets the notifications about, well, you should do a checkup because you're walking slower this week than last week. Is it useful? Um,
In my opinion, yes. I mean, isn't it a logistics problem? I mean, the healthcare system is exploding anyways. And now we have a system here in Austria, which is basically an annual checkup. You go to the doctor once a year, get a lot of standardized tests, and then they find something or they don't they find anything, and then you walk home or you get the treatment. Wouldn't it be an improvement if you can really make it just in time to that people just are hooked on appliances
Yes,
and
yes, that would, I totally agree with you that that would be, of course, good. And then you can also maybe do some changes. So you can be aware of what the risks are, and you can also get the support in changing things. Yeah. And
that
get treatment if that's necessary, of course, already early on. Yeah.
maybe some ethical questions. So I think when the iPhone gives the person an electroshock for when they want to drink alcohol, so I think
Yeah.
that's bad for the system. So
Mm. Yes, that would be. And also, I think that being monitored 24/7 could also be
we
complicated from this point of view.
we are already there yet. I think when I
Yes,
look at
yes.
when I look,
I'm curious, you can see all the data that are actually collected. So I think for me to get sort of the feedback on how my walking distances and where I was, I don't know. I don't remember where I was walking like three weeks ago,
mm,
having a walk in the evening or something. And someone else has all the information about that.
I mean, when it comes to running, I like the development. I had a phase where I ran a lot of marathons, but it's 12 years
Oh,
ago.
wow.
And I remember
Didn't
one
you
thing.
use Runkeeper back then?
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Runkeeper. It was the first one that was on the
Yeah.
market.
Mm.
And before I did write some journals, but this was really difficult because I had nothing to measure and it was a lot of work.
Also complicated to understand how long you were running, right?
Yeah,
For the distance, not the time, but the distance.
the only proper measurement back then was basically at an event, at a running event.
Mm.
But also with Runkeeper, I mean, the first versions, there was no Apple Watch. The iPhone was not really accurate back then.
No, you could
And
see like these really strange transitions between different parts of the run. Yeah.
GPS was not accurate and the battery life was horrible. It was just, I think, 30 minutes or 40 minutes and the battery was empty. It was,
So you had to run really quickly or short distances. Mm.
but what I learned with Runkeeper early on, I mean, it became better with every iPhone. So the battery problem was solved pretty quickly. Also, the GPS accuracy uh, was solved, I think, already with the iPhone 4 or 5 or something. But what I learned with Runkeeper is the community around running. Anytime when I finished an official marathon with 42.2 kilometers, I got a lot of positive feedback from people in the US, from people in Australia.
Ah,
And
really?
it's
So you were
so,
connected to some sort of open community.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
And this is something really which pushed me forward. And I learned a lot about how positive words can influence or can reinforce positive behavior.
Yeah, but I'm impressed by the fact that you have been running marathons. That's impressive, I think. I never run that far. So,
Yeah, I had a phase, it was 2012, 2013, where I did a marathon almost every month. So
okay.
it
Wow.
was I think,
I
in
never
one,
heard about that before. Great.
there are people that are just more addicted to that than I was back then. So this is on Strava, for example, there is a guy, I think, I have to look it up. I think isn't he in Sweden? I have to look it up, but he runs a marathon every day. Every day, the same course.
But how does he have time for that? Is that the only thing he's doing?
I
He
don't
runs
know.
probably very fast as well. but
Right. Every day, 3.5 hours in the morning, 6 to 9, probably then off to work.
but there are also these people who run like ultra long time, or like running for as long distance as you can manage for like 6 hours, or 10Ks every hour, and they're right. Yeah, you know all about this.
There are a lot of 100-mile runs through the wilderness, mostly in the United States, in the mountains with some 1,000 meters up and down as a
Mm.
descent. Then I think that the weirdest thing that I have heard of is a 1,000-mile run in New York on a 1 kilometer course, where people just they start and they stop when they hit 1,000 miles.
Ah, that's a bit crazy.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Let's go back to
Yeah, yeah,
ATMPs. And
I think so. That's better. Yeah.
you did a lot of research in oncology, focused on biomarkers, and then moved to ATMPs. How was the process from biomarkers in oncology to ATMPs? How did you discover that area?
Yeah, so I haven't been a researcher within ATMP, so I have sort of a different type of role nowadays. So what I did was, when I ended sort of my career as a researcher, I started working with clinical trials at the hospital, at the rheumatology department, and I got more and more interested in the clinical trials and the innovation around that and things like that. And then I was actually doing a few years, I had a position at a technical university in Gothenburg called Chalmers, where I was working with as a research advisor at the grants office. And Chalmers is known for the focus um, on innovation and to the utilization process. Even if it's mainly not for clinical trials, it's more biomaterial and automotive and all different areas. It was still very interesting to me, the focus on the research being utilized, and that was quite new to me when I came to Chalmers. And when I was working there, I also saw a different type of approach. When you had my background, you could also work with the support for the management of the university, for example, with the applications and to prioritize what researchers should be candidates for different calls and such. And you could also work as sort of an expert in an area, supporting large EU projects and coordinating projects and things like that, which I wasn't aware of that before as a researcher. So, but then I was also longing back to, I wanted to come back to the life science, to the clinic. So I applied for a position working with clinical trials at the Sahlgrenska University Hospital in 2020, just when we had the pandemic. And when I came back there, they also worked with the ATMP. So they had a newly established ATMP center, which I got involved in quite soon after I came back to the hospital. So I think the interest from my point of view, from my perspective, was to be involved in this really interesting area, of course, but also to be involved in this big projects and to develop and this new area within the hospital, but also to be connected to national initiatives, which was also a part of that position. So I had the opportunity to join into national initiatives focusing on ATMP and the innovation system. It was a specific one called ATMP 2030, which is one of the larger projects or initiatives within ATMP Sweden. So we're working with on a national level, trying to support different parts of the ecosystem, and this has been so much fun, and also it's so impressive to see the community working together with different stakeholders to improve the capacity and the capability in Sweden to be able to be a country to be sort of involved in international programs and projects, and be a part of the countries that are actually sort of trying to be very much involved in developing the area of ATMP. So for me, this was really, I am so happy that I came back to the hospital and was able to join this community and to be a part of this. It has been so much fun.
I have taken 3 notes while you were speaking. It's ATMP 2030, clinical trials and international collaboration. Maybe we can dive into these 3 topics a little bit deeper in the final hour of our conversation.
Yeah.
Let's start with clinical trials. When I started in life science in 2006, I mean, I came from M&A and also studied at the University of Graz business, and we had a lot of process management topics. And for me, it was like you plug something into a process and it just moves through very smoothly, and at the end you get a drug on the market, and that's it. It's easy. But I learned quickly that it's not that easy, because you have to connect the academic mindset, which is very unique and special, to really move something forward and find new ideas, into a development mindset, which is then not so much creative, but more focused on moving something forward and improving that, but developing the processes from scratch. And then I learned that clinical trials are complete another set of stages. It's not similar to this preclinical development, not similar to academia. You need to involve much more people, and then finally we hit the market. I would like to learn from you, how is it to get a new drug into clinical trials? What's your experience with that? Is it easy? Is it difficult? What are the challenges in this field?
It depends. If it's a product that has been developed within the academy, it might be a lot of hurdles to be sort of trying to overcome. And for ATMP, this isn't that rare. Many of the products are developed within an academic setting, and we see that one of the very important things to support the researchers is to be connected quite early to people that know more about the transition from preclinic to clinic, because you have to prepare your product already early on in your tests to be a product that will be given to a patient later on. And this is a really long process, and you need to be very aware that this is a long process that also costs a lot of money. So, and what we can see, I think maybe it's the same in other countries as well, but what we see in Sweden is that we have difficulties finding funding for the clinical trials. And they are very expensive, and there are not that many different calls that you can apply for. So this is also something that we hope, now that decision makers are more aware of ATMPs and of course other products as well, that they can also support that transition, find a way to support that. But it is very complicated, and with ATMPs, we hope that the hospitals have the GMP facilities. Some of the hospitals in Sweden have GMP facilities where they are manufacturing ATMPs. And they also have the knowledge and the experience, even if ATMPs are a very broad type of drugs. They look very different, as we already talked about the gene therapies and the somatic cell therapies and tissue engineering. And even if they are gene therapies, they can still be very different from each other. So the variety is also something that you need to be aware of, but you can still have some support maybe from the experienced people working in the hospital GMP facilities if you are a researcher. If the product comes from a company, they are more aware of the difficulties, and they also have, if it's a big company, they also have the resources and maybe the experience from a lot of clinical trials, and this is just sort of the next level or the next level or something. So they can also maybe cope with these difficulties more easy. But I think that as we see in Sweden now, we have also this initiative called CCRM Nordic, which is an innovation cluster or innovation hub. It's located close to Gothenburg, where I'm from, and it was established, or the initiative was sort of starting. It's almost 2 years ago now, and they are building a large facility where they can help with the commercialization. So CCRM stands for Center for Commercialization of Regenerative Medicine Nordic. So it's the plan is to be a center for all the Nordic countries to support with these difficult steps from preclinic to clinic to commercialized product. And we also see that we have a lot of partnerships between the hospitals and the CCRM Nordic to find a way how to improve the support and the capability to develop products in Sweden.
That's great. We got a question. We have Luca Bolliger in our conversation. Maybe let me ask him quickly if he wants to ask. It's in the Q&A tool. I'm not sure if you can see the Q&A tool.
Yes.
Can you see it? Maybe let me just, why not ask him if he wants to ask the question in audio? See. Just ask for permission if he wants to talk live, or rather me reading the question. Let's see if. Okay, I take it as a yes and promote you to a panelist. I like it when it's more interactive and when people can.
Yes.
Let's see if I interpret it right, and he's up to ask the question. Luca.
His mic is off, I think.
Luca, welcome.
Hello, thank you very much for the very interesting discussion that you guys are sharing with us. I just have a quick question. When I see and think about this type of therapies, I think about bone marrow transplantation. And shouldn't we take the bone marrow transplantation-like approach in order to effectively try to tackle as many of these diseases as possible? Because I'm not sure that pharma and biotech are the right partner for this type of therapeutics. And, from a financing point of view, there is no way that we're going to be able to finance all these CAR-Ts, cell therapies, and so on. So I'm just wondering, what would be your position to have a more bone marrow transplantation approach in this space as well? Thank you.
Yes, if I understand you correctly, you ask for maybe to have more point of care production, maybe a licensed type of production of these therapies for the hospitals to be able to afford, and also to maybe shorten the delivery of the product and the manufacturing sort of part. And I think this is a very important question. Thank you for asking me. I think I agree with you. I think we need to find a way to standardize the protocols and to better understand how the hospitals can maybe support and handle parts of the production, both for as I mentioned, to shorten the time that the manufacturing takes, but also to be more affordable. But we haven't really seen that yet. But I know that this is a discussion that we hear. And we also have in Europe, we have the hospital exemption that you might be aware of. And we have, and we see that this is also handled in a slightly different way depending on which country you're in. So this is also raising questions, but I think we need to talk about this, because I think the goal is to treat the patient, and we need to understand how we can do that in the best, and of course for the hospitals and for the publicly funded healthcare, it's important that we can afford it. So I agree.
Thank you very much. Maybe can I ask another quick, just a quick one? In Sweden, you have great registry for treatments. Do you have a registry for, let's say, the space as well? Thank you. And I will follow and listen incognito. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have registries. I think there is actually some difficulties of understanding how to connect the registries. We have registries for many types of different patient groups. And I might not be the right person to answer that question, Luca, but I know that there has been difficulties with the documentation in the registries, and so far it hasn't been that many patients. It's a little bit over 200 treated with CAR-T in Sweden, but I think it would be very important to share the data, of course, in these registries ahead. And I know that there are discussions on this, but I don't really know where it stands right now.
Thank you, Luca, for the questions. I will put you back toward to an attendee. So I will now rejoining as an attendee. It's really great how Zoom works, that I can promote people. It's like asking them coming on stage and then putting them back into the audience. It's really great how they solve that. One question from my side. You mentioned ATMP 2030 as an initiative. What is it exactly?
So it's a project, a national project funded by the Innovation Agency in Sweden, Vinnova, and it has been, it actually ended in November, at the end of November last year. So it had been ongoing for 5 years with the aim of focusing on system innovation. So the idea was to understand how we better can improve the use of and the development of ATMPs in Sweden. So we have different sub-goals focusing on different parts, and we had one sub-goal focusing on manufacturing and commercialization, and we now see the CCRM Nordic Hub developing in Sweden, which is one really good achievement from that initiative. And we also have one sub-goal focusing on the healthcare and the implementation and the use of cost-effective ATMPs in Swedish healthcare. And we can see that we now have more products implemented in healthcare, and we see that we also have quite good connections between the different university hospitals. We have the ATMP centers with the representatives that meet every month, every 4 weeks, and share experience and information between each other, and can also gather information of, for example, clinical trials, which they have been doing now. So we present it on the web page, ATMP Sweden, under Hospital Hub. You can find ATMP Hub. You can find information about the ongoing clinical trials with ATMP in Sweden. And we can also see that this, the last 5 years or so, we have had an increase in feasibility around clinical trials. So there have been more questions about conducting clinical trials with ATMP in the Swedish healthcare the last years, which is very positive. We can also see another of the sub-goals have been focusing on education and the competence need. So we have a few reports focusing on what type of education is needed and what type of competences will both the hospital, the academia, and the industry be interested in, and is there anything that we need to, any courses that we need to develop and introduce into the educational programs. And we see that we have a lot of activity within the universities and the industries focusing on trying to support each other with developing courses and take part in different educational initiatives. In the western parts of Sweden, we now have 2 projects focusing on competence and need and educational initiatives. And we have one focusing on the healthcare personnel, which we have not talked that much about yet, but it has, there are new types of areas and competences that are needed for the people working in the healthcare with the ATMP. So, and we think also that we might need to sort of increase the general knowledge about the ATMP and the new products that are introduced. And we'll have, and this is a very ambitious program that we think will increase the competence a lot in the healthcare personnel. It's focusing on the western parts of Sweden to start, but we hope that we can build some kind of concept that can be used by other regions and maybe in other countries as well. I don't know, but it could be, so not everyone needs to develop their own material and their own courses. So we can share that in Sweden and maybe if other countries are interested as well. And we also have another project focusing on developing courses for the people working in the companies, working together with academia. It's just started, both of them. So let's see where what will happen. But I think this are really nice initiatives. And we also have a research school for PhD students have also been funded the last couple of years from the Research Council in Sweden. So we see that a lot of the initiatives that sort of was driven by the innovation milieu, ATMP 2030, is also some stuff is happening in Sweden. And even though we are not, of course, the only one who are responsible for this change, we see that the connection between different groups and different stakeholders that were facilitated or joined through the community within ATMP 2030 has been really successful, in my opinion. Yeah.
You mentioned we need new competencies for the healthcare workers. Which new competencies do you see? What type of training is needed in future in regards to ATMPs?
So we see that we can probably use the people that are already working in the healthcare because they are very knowledgeable. They have a lot of experience. So people who have previously been working with maybe transplantations or these kinds of things can be trained to work in the facilities where you collect the blood or the tissue and then that are then used for as a starting material for a product. But and also for the pharmacists, for example, they also need to handle this new type of products, and there are other regulations around that. So maybe they need to add on some new knowledge to be able to use it. And the same is for the clinician and for the nurses, of course. So we think that we can probably educate people who are already, and they are, the people working with close to the patients are very much interested in being able to give the new, innovative, and efficient treatments. So we just need to support them, because maybe they don't really have time to go to other places to take courses or to maybe educate the colleagues. So the project aimed to support with these type of things, and also to transfer knowledge from one person to the rest of the group, maybe, and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, Luca had a point probably here. I just was thinking it through. When I think about small molecules, for example, you get the idea from academia, you put it in preclinical development, develop a manufacturing process, then bring it into clinics, scale the process up when it's possible, and then you license it into big pharma, some of the big players, Bayer, Boehringer, Merck, whoever, and they are really proficient in scaling it globally.
Yes.
But the thing is, it's you produce a product that it's easy to ship in a way that it's really easy to ship, and then you deploy it to hospitals, pharmacies, and patients buy it, and that's it. So it's more or less one stream of action towards the patient in one direction, with a very slow feedback loop. Of course, you monitor the patients, and when you have adverse events, you analyze that, but it's a very slow feedback loop back into research and back at the beginning of the process. And after listening to you and Luca, the process for ATMPs, it's a two-way loop. So basically, it's back from the patients in real time to manufacturer. They need to manufacture an entirely new product compared to small molecules for every patient, for every single patient, and then back to the patient. This must be a huge challenge.
Yeah.
To just reiterate what Luca wrote, but this is very challenging.
But all the products aren't of this type, of course. So these are the ones where you use the patient's own cells. So there are also new products coming where you can use donors to have products that you can, more like off-the-shelf products that will sort of decrease the complexity of the product and the manufacturing, because you can make larger batches and transport them at the same time to the hospital or to some storage or something. But so we see, I think this is the complexity need. The community or the developers are trying to decrease the complexity and find other ways, because it has been also, as we were talking about the cost before, we need to decrease the cost, and it could also be a way of doing that could be that you can make larger batches and that you can have them stored for a longer time and things like that. So I think there are many different parts that could probably be developed further for better, for easier use and maybe also easier manufacturing and cheaper products.
Yeah, it's just for brainstorming. For me as a business person, business people hate complexity. It just drives cost, and when it becomes too expensive, you narrow down the number of patients who really benefit from that. Sometimes it's only then the rich again, and not the average person, because it's just far too expensive. When we brainstorm and you could model an ideal world, and I think in my opinion, the ideal world is, of course, using the patient's own system to cure the patient. And as long as you can use that, I think it's more beneficial for the person than using donor cells or for something else. When we just stay in that world, in that thought, what would be an ideal setup for? Wouldn't that be a possibility to invent a new industry? Basically, to go away from pharma industry and just set it up by itself? And for centers, for example, what would be, in your opinion, the ideal solution for that, to bring the costs down and to really have affordable treatments for everybody?
I haven't thought about that.
Just as idea brainstorming.
Yeah, but I think as we were talking about the point of care production or manufacturing, like customized products that you can manufacture really close to the patient or in centers, that would be very interesting, I think. And also if you have like we talked about one genetic disease where you inherit blindness for one specific gene, that we now have a product for treating these patients. But if it's another gene that is not functioning, which causes more or less the same, it would be, wonderful if you just could, take the gene editing tool at the hospital, you identify the patient's mutation or deficiency, and then you can just introduce the right gene into this sort of already prepared product or concept, and then you produce a specific customized product for the patient. That would be, of course, amazing if you could do that, and very useful. But still, I think also, depending on the development, it could also be very many patients that will be relevant for these types of therapies. So I think that is something that you need to be aware of. Will it be possible to build these infrastructures and manufacturing laboratories within the hospitals? Is that the way that we want to do it? It's complex, and who will? I think it needs to be. We need to wait a while before we know the best way of approaching this, I think, because it's still a little bit too complex to understand. As we talked about a little before, the products, the ATMPs are so different from each other. So some of them might be really good to have a point of care production and licensing the production, but I think some of them might be too difficult for us to handle within the hospital.
I was thinking while you were speaking, I believe many people in Europe will hate me when I say that, but I say it anyways. When you look towards the US, especially in the last year, what they did, they shot a rocket up into space and then brought it back down and caught it with chopsticks.
Yeah.
And we can't do that in Europe, so probably with the US. But while you were speaking, to be more serious, I mean, what you basically need at the hospital is a GMP facility and a standardized process at the end of the day. So you take the cells from the patient, just to stay with this one example. We started the conversation with that. And when you have this facility, you just need to put it through. What makes it complex is when it's not standardized and you need human intervention, and this is expensive, needs a lot of training, and it slows the process down. But with these new tools that we have, I mean, we can shoot rockets. I just brought the example because we can do that. With Elon Musk, for example, I mean, you shoot rockets into the air and then bring it back down. And I think he cut the cost back by 90%. So this reusable rocket system is now much more cost efficient.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, would it be possible with AI and robotics to standardize a lab in a way that you can basically deploy it at every larger hospital at very low cost, so that you have this standardized center where no human intervention is necessary anymore?
Yeah, probably. I think probably maybe you need to have someone signing off stuff, but I think yes, I think because we are now seeing some products that are similar, but still a little bit different. And if we better understand how to standardize that, it will probably it would probably be a way of handling it. Yes. We see also new systems that are used for the production and for the processing of the product. So which are more closed systems, and that you code and you design them and you decide what they should do. You sort of program them, and then they are doing all the work. And of course, we have people checking and doing controls and things like that. But I think that could more of those things could probably also be designed into the system, I would guess. And that is probably what we need. Closed systems that are managing themselves would be useful for the hospitals, I think, because then you don't need as much area to be used for the production either. You don't have to have specific room for the specific product standing ready for a patient, but you can be more efficient in how you use the resources.
Yeah, I think Alex Zavorankov really had a point there with this idea of a fully automated lab for such cases, and with robotics and integrating that. And I think he's working on. There's a lot of possibility of what makes it expensive. And
you could test that in Sweden. You should test that in Sweden.
Yeah, it was on my podcast. I can send you the episode. Maybe you reach out to him. And he's operating in China, in Dubai, in the United States, and I think also in the UK. But Sweden would be a place.
Yeah, and maybe they are already discussing it with the CCRM Nordic, because I know that they have many very interesting projects and thoughts about how to be also very dynamic type of lab, so you can adjust to different settings and things like that.
Yeah, I like the point from Luca. Really, I mean, you don't need to put everything into an established industry. You can just be innovative and disruptive, and which leads to the next block of questions, which is international collaboration, especially across diverse sectors. How do you see that in Sweden, in the healthcare ecosystem? How easy or challenging is that?
Which of them do you mean now?
When we talk, I mean, when I think back to my career in life science, 2006, I was working for a small molecule company, a spin-out of Novartis, and it was pretty much the standardized process, small molecule, and you have everything established in the industry and you just push it through. Then 6 or 7 years later was the advent of digital health. So they were the first idea of digitalizing the whole process and products, and I found it pretty challenging when I was talking with venture capitalists and also with at BioEurope, for example. It looked to me like we have two silos. We have this digital space, and then we have this biopharma space, and there was almost no connection. And it took 10 to 12 years to loosen that up. And I think, I mean, we have these collaboration issues within the existing value chain, which is really challenging. We talked already about it. But then you get a lot of diverse ideas from different sectors, like robotics, for example. You can now pull robots in and think about rethink manufacturing from ground up and say, okay, what if we take the human factor out? We don't need probably a plant somewhere. We can put it really into a hospital. And how can we do that? But it needs a lot of collaboration and getting people into communication, which I find sometimes very challenging. How do you see the potential to enhance this process of cross-sectoral communication?
Yeah, I agree. I think this is something that we probably need to be more open to, how do we meet? I think this is the first. How do we get connected, and how do we understand that this is what we need if we don't really know about the area? So I was invited to this event last summer, which was focusing on digitalization, and it had not really anything to do with, it could have, to healthcare and to life science, but it had to do with other types of areas. But they invited me because they saw that they could probably do stuff for for ATMP area and for the development. And this is, of course, the first approach, and I think it might be a really good connection that we get in the same room, and that we present what we are working on, and people that know other stuff, can say, so this is not an issue. This is something that we have been doing in the automotive industry or something, and we can just transfer it to this setting, and it will probably help you a lot. And we have also now in the close to where the CCR Nordic is located, we also have it's called Health Innovation, not Health Innovation West, but I forgot. But it's GoCo. It's called GoCo. So it's a community or an area close to AstraZeneca, where AstraZeneca is located, where you can. They have open office spaces, and we see that in these office spaces, like Volvo Cars have also office there, and we can see that different types. It's not just the life science businesses, so we can see other types of companies getting contact with the life science companies, which I think is maybe something that could develop this better understanding, and maybe how to collaborate and how to connect with each other. But I think it is we are more aware of the need for this type of collaboration. So it's not only between academia, healthcare, and industry and patients, but it's now also with different types of industry and different types of experts within the academia that work with other types of questions. So we need new meeting points where we can present and discuss these questions. So that's interesting. I think let's look at it from a year now or two and see if we can initiate and what has happened, because I think there are a lot of people understanding this now, and we can also see that we have connections to people working with data that are connected and try to develop systems, quality systems that can be useful for ATMPs. So yeah.
I totally agree to what you said. One thing is getting people into the same room from different sectors and just present work and listen to problems they have, and maybe there is already a solution out on the market that can easily be transformed to other industries. And I think also podcasts and social media will play a role in this process. I mean, at the end of the day, what we are producing now is data. And the beauty with ChatGPT, artificial intelligence, I mean, they all use this data via YouTube. And I think in future, I hope these tools evolve in that direction, that they also look into their data when someone has a communication about a problem they face, and use this data podcasts produce and social media produce. Meanwhile, on a daily basis, a lot of people are publishing on social media and just come up with ideas and say, okay, look at this post or look at this podcast. And they were talking about a similar problem from a different industry. And when we don't prohibit the use of data, where in Europe we have, I think, a passion for prohibition and for privacy. But if we allow that process, it can enhance a lot of industry in real time.
Yeah, I agree. And it's very, it's interesting, and it would be interesting to see what happens with when we get connected, because I think it's important. I think maybe this is something that I can take with me into my new position, working as a business developer at the business region Gothenburg. So because then my colleagues are working in different types of areas, so we have really close to each other, and we can probably connect people and the companies with each other if we just understand how to do it. Yeah.
That's great. I just see even time flies. We have 8 minutes left. We have scheduled until 3:30, so it's it's already 8 minutes to the end point. I would like to focus the last part of the last 8 minutes and just use it for brainstorming and future-oriented questions. Just open questions. It's just ideas. It must not be accurate, and if
Oh.
it doesn't happen, so it's just ideas. When you think about ATMP and especially in the Swedish ecosystem, how do you see it in the next 10 years? We are talking about 2035. How do you see ATMPs transforming the healthcare system in the next 10 years?
Yes, so we expect more products to be approved and to be introduced into the Swedish healthcare, of course. So and we think also that the patient groups might be larger, so there will be more patients that will be treated. Even with the ones that are already approved, they get second indications, and they get, as we talked about in the beginning, that the patient get access to these treatments already early on when they get the diagnosis. So this will increase the patient groups. And I think it will be like a transition. It would make a big difference for the healthcare. So we can treat people that did not have any available treatment before, which is of course amazing. That's fantastic news. It will be very interesting how the costs will be handled, I think. We see difficulties with the authorities and the public healthcare, how to handle the costs. So this will be, I think, an issue how to do that. But if the products also get sort of more easily produced, and that the development costs will be and the production costs will be lowered, this could also have an effect, of course. We see also other types of, now we see mainly blood cancers and a few monogenetic diseases. But what we see now is that there are new products that are introduced in clinical trials in different areas, like autoimmune diseases. And that could, of course, be a game changer for these patients. So maybe if they didn't, before they are in pain, or they are having lowered life quality, they can have a better and improved life quality, and maybe no pain or less pain. And that would be, that's also, of course, amazing, that you can get better and better life quality, and maybe you can be a part of the work force for more years. So you have to also, put that into the context when you calculate on the costs and things like that. But we also would expect maybe products that be introduced for diabetes, for example, which of course is it's a lifelong disease. So if you get cured at an early age, that would make a big difference. But I think we need to follow the development and what is happening, and what type of products that are coming in the pipeline. And we have to have a good connection to the industry, I think, and also the academia, to understand what is coming and what is to be expected. And then we can prepare the healthcare for that. Because we would like to give patient access, of course. This is very important. And it's important for I guess, all European countries.
My final question, time really flies.
Yes.
When we
have 4-minute answer on the last one. I'm sorry about that.
No, I just want to stay on time for you, so that you can go to the other meetings. When we think about the future that you were talking about, and bring it into, at the end, into actionable advice for policymakers, for researchers, for investors, what are the 3 biggest challenges that would make sense to start working on now and solving that to make that future happen? What would be your recommendation?
So I think it's very important that we look into the regulations and reimbursement pathways, because if we don't give access to the patient for these therapies now, I think it will also send signals about the future. So I think we need to understand how to better create faster, more flexible regulatory and reimbursement pathways. That is very important, and to better understand how the HTA process is working. And now we have, since I think not today, but now this year, in the beginning of this year, we have maybe this week, we have a change in the HTA. So we have a joint HTA process for the European countries for some of the products, and the ATMPs are one of them. So the European countries have sort of joined together to better evaluate the products joint at the European level, and then you would expect the countries to sort of follow that evaluation when they do their introduction in the country. So I think this is very important.
So it's basically a call for deregulation.
Yeah. But also, I would like them to also support the sort of the infrastructures, the building of the infrastructures, of course, because we also need to have the capacity for the innovation and for the development, and have the funding to, as we talked about early on, that we need to have the funding to be able to do this expensive development, since it will be so rewarding.
Yeah, we need more investment capital, definitely in Europe. The US is still far ahead. What I hear from Saudi Arabia, it's pretty much the same. They put a lot of money into that. And in Europe, what we really need is venture capital, is risk capital that is available for development, also for ATMPs. I think we still have a huge gap there.
Yeah.
Kristina, is there anything open that you would like to address at the end of our podcast?
No, but I think it's important to say that this is a very exciting area. If that didn't really come through, I think maybe it did. But we also need, we need the young people to focus and to try to get the interest up for the young people to get educated within the field, and try to and connect with people working in ATMP field. And there are courses and educations now. And if you are a student and you want to know more, there are also platforms where you can find courses around Europe, at least. So I think it's we need the young people to commit to the ATMP field.
I totally agree. And if it makes the life for patients much better, I mean, it's worthwhile pursuing. And it's really promising what's going on in that field. Kristina, thank you very much for this conversation. I enjoyed it a lot and learned a lot about ATMP. And
yes, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It was great. Yeah.
You're welcome. And let's keep working on making the world a better place for the kids.
Yes. Perfect. Thank you. And all about, I know so much more about the the marathons, but which was a little bit unexpected, but great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon and have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Bye-bye.
See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.